uses a short, clever saying to express a general truth. So what Honest Abe was saying, he's challenging our perspective or our potential to change perspective. And Paul does the same in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17. If you observe in Paul's writings a cyclical thread in his epistles to the body of the believers at varied locations, whether it's at Corinth or Thessalonica or Ephesus, etc., is the privilege of being co-laborers with Christ. Paul accentuates in his writings that it is an honor to be in the fields co-laboring with Christ in the plan of redemption. Along with that, in his writings, you would find doctrinal expositions or resolutions of ecclesiastical controversies. You see, the tension of tribulations, or in the Caribbean lingo or jargon, we like to say pressure, are diminutive in comparison. They're nothing but secondary to the eternal glory of our Heavenly Father. To endure for the cause of Christ is the believer's decoration of the Purple Heart. And if you know what the Purple Heart is, you know that it's a military honor that means a service member has greatly sacrificed themselves or paid the ultimate price while in the line of duty. So just to repeat, to endure for the cause of Christ is the believer's decoration of the Purple Heart. And this has been the unswerving perspective of the apostles and the early Christian church. It has been the perspective, Mr. Master of Ceremonies, of Reformation figures like Martin Luther, John Huss, who, when condemned to death on July 6, 1415, while at the stake with wood piled to his neck and fire and the flames engulfing him, instead of the spectators hearing screams of agony, they heard him singing in Latin, Domini Jesu Christe Filii Dei Miserere me peccatores. That means, Christ, thou Son of the living God, have mercy upon me. Instead of screams of anguish, they heard praise coming from his lips. Men like Jerome, Zwingli, Tyndale, the fathers of modern mission, William Carey and James Hudson Taylor. Members of the tent-making ministry today. Those are members who are placed in strategic countries which are adverse to Christianity, who ply a trade and are still spreading the gospel. And those who trumpet Christ crucified and rehearse Christianity in adverse foreign nations. And this morning I leave you once again with the Bible text as a source of encouragement. Momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Thank you. God bless.
Greetings. Good morning, everybody. Come on, do better. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you. Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Fitzroy Haywood, Pastor Nissi Lafleur, student workers, faculty and staff, ASB members, my fellow delegates. Yes. I'll give you the privilege to welcome everybody here to this leadership seminar. We should be honored that we have this chance to learn more about leadership and to improve and to enhance our leadership skills. So I trust and pray that we can learn and gain something fresh or gain something new at this seminar. And at this time, so once again, welcome to this seminar. And I do hope you have an enjoyable 3 hours. I will now do a spoken word. I'm not a spoken word kind of person, so I'm going to read the spoken word. All right? It's about leadership, and it was given to me by Miss Google. Miss Google, yes. The Leader by Anonymous. patient and steady with all he must bear, ready to meet every challenge with care. Easy in manner, yet solid as steel, strong in his faith, refreshingly real. Isn't afraid to propose what is bold, doesn't conform to the usual mold. Eyes that have foresight, for hindsight won't do, never backs down when he sees what is true. Tells it all straight and knowing he's right, even when doubted for why he would fight. Over and over he makes his case clear, reaching to touch the ones who won't hear. Yeah, my members there. Ever assuring he'll stand by his word, wanting the world to join his forms stand. Bracing for war, but praying for peace, using his power so evil will cease. So much a leader and worthy of trust. Here we are today. We will do what we must. Thank you very much.
I am not going to squander any precious time this morning on introducing someone who requires no introduction in this community. Students of USC, your Vice President, Pastor Unesi Lafleur.
Good morning, everyone. It's not yet afternoon. I want to acknowledge the presence of our guest speaker today. And we're grateful you made it, sir. I acknowledge the presence of faculty member, Pastor Terence Brown. Grateful you made it with us. I am happy that we are finally able to restart the leadership lectures here at USC. After 3 years of absence, we are able to recommence. This is in a small step to building a center of leadership, research, and entrepreneurship among our students here at USC. I want to tell you when you look at what confronts our world, the church, for those getting into ministry, the corporate world, and our society as a whole, we realize that the society is crying out, and many entities are crying out for leaders. When I attended university, my very first university, we considered ourselves at that time leaders in exile. And strange enough, the guy who considered himself the Attorney General in exile is now the Attorney General of my country of Guyana. But it all began with a ferment for knowledge, ferment for learning, ferment for understanding how to do it right. And it started on a campus. And so, even though we run this unique Christian campus, Mr. McKenna, we think it very necessary that for the youth to be rounded, for the youth to grow, for the youth to really exhibit the characteristics and the traits necessary to simply not possess a degree, but to make an impact after having that degree, that sessions like these are very, very, very important. So I want you to begin to, as the presentation is made today, begin to visualize yourself 10 years from now, sitting behind a desk with a tie, making critical decisions, strategic decisions to chart an institution forward. I want to tell you that my humble experience is that nothing beats gaining the experience day by day to lead. Nothing beats learning on the job. And nothing beats learning from those who have gone this way before. So as Mr. Haywood presents, soak up everything. There may be a very critical decision that you may have to make in the future that that you may be able to refer to this presentation. I often remember the fact that you never know where you may serve and how quickly you may get there. You may get there very fast because of opportunity, or you may take some time to get there. But the important thing is that when you get there, you should be able and equipped to serve and make a difference. Be committed to be a leader of integrity. Be committed to be a leader of change. Be committed to be a leader that impacts this 21st century world. May God bless you richly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. We are now going to have a special activity conducted by Ms. Denique Martin of the Associated Student Body. Following that activity, we'd be motivated in song by Mr. Joash Prowell. Ms. Martin, then Mr. Prowell.
Okay, so greetings everyone. So today, I would like to ask for your participation in a small icebreaker activity. So, can I have 3 leaders in this activity, please? Y'all can just come and stand on the stage, please, and thank you. Okay, great. Okay, so stand on that side, please. To the right. Yeah, to the right. All right, now can I have 12 participants, please? You all will be the followers, as these will be the leaders. Please stand on the left, thank you.
ASB members.
Okay, just line up.
Student Dean.
Okay. So, followers, can you all choose one card? I don't matter which one. Did everyone get one? One more? Okay, can I have one more participant, please? Thank you, Christina. One more? Okay, so leaders, these are students of USC, right? And I want you all to choose 4 members each. You're choosing them based on their program and what has written on the paper, right? So, to do this in an orderly manner, Rian, sorry, can you say it your program, or at least all participants have your flyers where they can see? Fanny? Okay. Can you just step back a little bit, please? Just step back. Fanny, step back. Right. Can you all see? Okay. What's your name? Okay, so Jamal, choose one person. Right. Just stand behind him, please. Daniel, choose one student. Senior psychology student. Vanny, choose one. Right? You can go ahead. Yeah.
Master's student.
Okay. Daniel. Jamal. Fanny. Columbia. Go ahead.
Theologian student.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Master students.
Come, Vanny.
Psychology student with a 1.9.
2.9. 2.9. Go ahead.
Oh, parent of what?
Parent on two, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Daniel. Okay. And, well,
I
you
might
go
be
to
hard
Vianney.
work for portraits.
Okay. So thank you, leaders, for choosing your members. Can I have Daniel, you and your members, please walk across the stage. Right. So Daniel, why did you choose the senior psychology student?
Well, basically, psychology is my major, so I was first looking at people within my major. But then, after a while, I just to keep the program running, I just selected people at random because I don't want to show any type of favoritism or anything, as we are all part of one student body. So.
Okay, thank you. So, viewers, this senior psychology student, for the entire duration of their program, wanted to drop out at every junction. However, they managed to push through and are on their way to graduating. So, Daniel, why did you choose the freshman student?
Well, we all have to start from somewhere, and freshman is where we start off from. And our starting point is very important because we could come from so many different backgrounds, and we shouldn't let our background or things that we experienced in the past hold us back from achieving things, well, from doing things in the present to achieve more in the future. And no matter how you start, the most important thing is how you finish. So we must stay strong in whatever we do and whatever we start.
Thank you. Okay, so the freshman student is a 26-year-old police officer furthering and expanding their skill sets. So just to move along, the senior pre-med student is a senior pre-med student. There's nothing to it. And the master's student, this master's student is completing their third master's degree program. So, this is our first leader, and he chose. Please step aside. Can I have Vianney? Okay, Vianney. So, you chose the criminology student with a 3.5 GPA, a Colombian theologian student, a psychology student with a 2.9 GPA, and a junior music student. So why did you choose these students to be in a part of your group?
Well, for criminology, it's common for us to get these kind of GPAs. So I chose a star. I chose a star within my program. So that's why I chose Miss Lila Louis, as she's a criminology major in real life, you know. For Colombian theologian students, it's all about diversity. We want to have the non-native speakers of English present within my group as well to show us how diverse the other nations, you know, how they are, you know. Psychology student with 2.9 GPA. That's very ironic because she did psychology. So, but not her GPA, right? But I chose her because she'll bring a new sense or a new feel to what we would bring to this leadership group. She also will present a unique perspective on the mind and how we should think as leaders. For the junior music major, she'll bring the vibe. She'll bring the music, she'll bring the fun, you know, and the melody towards this leadership. So you have a balance between each person here.
Thank you. So just to explain and further define the skill sets of the participants, the criminology student is a criminology student. There's nothing to it. The Colombian theologian student is a native Spanish speaker and skilled in 3 different languages. They are fluent English speakers as well as French and Chinese. Psychology student with a 2.9 GPA was a previous A student, however, failed a few courses after the death of their parents. The junior music student is the grandchild of a famous musician, Mr. Stevie Wonder. So, thank you. Go ahead. Yeah. What's your name? So, Jamal, you chose a nursing student, a master's student, and a theologian student. And interestingly, you chose the parent of 2 psychology students. Of 2 students, 2 children, they are psychology students, sorry. All right? So why did you choose these persons to be on your group?
Well, my initial thought was just to get a variety of persons. The nursing student brings the background of medical understanding and everything like that. I was not sure what we was going to do, so I definitely wanted that. The master's student brings experience. The master's student has already completed their bachelor's degree and is now doing the master's, so that will bring some experience to the mix. The theologian student ensures that we are spiritually grounded, right? Yes. And then the parent of 2 psychology students, now, the fact that a parent of 2 psychology students is present says something good. Says that the parent is involved in their students' life and everything, in their children's life and everything like that.
So, Mr. Jamal, the nursing student that you have chosen is an impatient and easily angered individual. The master's student that you have chosen, sadly, has been completing their master's for the past 8 years. Luckily, the theologian student strives to save as many persons in this world as possible. And lastly, the parents. They are a 49-year-old student who is completing a degree program out of Border. They have already acquired their PhD in child psychology and just wants to add another to their skill set. So thank you. So just to close off, this activity was just to show you guys how easily persons choose others based on what they see. They do not question as to why or the background of these individuals. So this is something you should look into when you are choosing persons who you want to work with or associate yourselves with. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I trust this song not only blesses our hearts, but gives us somewhat of counsel what we should be as leaders, and that we all are found faithful.
We're pilgrims on the journey, on the narrow road, and those who've gone before us light the way, cheering on the faithful, encouraging the weary. Their lives a stirring testament to God's sustaining grace. Who gone behind us. We're pilgrims on the journey of the narrow road, and those who've gone before us light the way, cheering on the faithful, encouraging the weary. Their lives a stirring testament to God's sustaining grace. Surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us run the race not only for the prize, but as those who've gone before us, let us leave to those behind us the heritage of faithfulness passed on through godly lives. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. After all our hopes and dreams have both come and gone, and our children sift through all we've left behind, may the clues that they discover and the memories they uncover become the light that leads them to the road we each must find. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. Oh, all who come behind us find us faithful. Oh, find us faithful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prowell. The singular honor is afforded me this morning to introduce today's feature speaker, Mr. Fitzroy Harewood. When I first received and perused the text of his biographical summary that I will share with you momentarily, I have to say that I was very impressed by what the language revealed about this gentleman. There was, however, a single seemingly minor detail that particularly struck my attention. I warned you this morning that I would return to the matter of being impressed by dates. And that detail that struck my attention was that at the end of the text, the month October was written, and the year 2022 was also written. What is so striking, what is so significant about this? It is that Mr. Harewood is accomplished but unfinished. There is more for him to do, and he possesses the humility to acknowledge new vistas for growth. And this is a hallmark, my dear friends, of outstanding leaders. Leaders who stay ready. And now to the text. Mr. Harewood is the current president of Point Lisas Nitrogen Limited, an ammonia manufacturing facility located on the Point Lisas Industrial Estate in Trinidad. Point Lisas Nitrogen Limited is a joint venture company owned by two US-based entities. Mr. Harewood has over 36 years of technical, managerial, and leadership experience in the oil, gas, power, and petrochemical industries. After his university graduation in 1985, he worked at the Telephone Company of Trinidad and Tobago, TELCO, and later TSTT, the Telecommunication Services of Trinidad and Tobago. He worked there as an engineer in training and as a project engineer. A year later, he joined the Trinidad and Tobago oil company Trintoc a predecessor company to the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, Petrotrin. And he joined as a project engineer and was involved in various projects across the integrated petroleum company. 10 years later, he moved to Hydro Agri Trinidad Limited, which later became Yara Trinidad Limited, based in Savonetta, Point Lisa, Trinidad. He joined as assistant manager, engineering. In that organization, one of the oldest petrochemical companies in Trinidad and Tobago, he served in various positions of increasing responsibility, including 3 years as human resources manager and culminating as production manager before moving on to the power generation company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, PowerGen, to take up the position of general manager from December 2011 to October 2015. On November the 1st, 2015, he was appointed to the position of president of Petrotrin and served in that position until his resignation at the end of February 2018. On June 11, 2018, he assumed the position of president of Point Lisa's Nitrogen Limited, his current company. Mr. Harewood is a graduate of the University of the West Indies with a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering and a postgraduate diploma in Management Studies. He also holds an MBA from Andrews University of Bering Springs, Michigan, USC. He currently serves the local energy industry as chairman of the Point Lisa's Energy Association of CEOs and as chairman of the Safe to Work Implementation Board of the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago. His professional memberships include the American Chamber of Commerce of Trinidad and Tobago, the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago, the Society for Human Resource Management, the Project Management Institute, and the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. Beyond the text, Mr. Harewood is also a dedicated member of the Point Fortin Seventh-day Adventist Church, an award-winning church that has done phenomenal work in terms of the ability of that church to nimbly pivot to the online environment which became necessary as a result of the pandemic. The bulk of Mr. Harewood's studies for his Andrews University MBA took place on the soil of the University of the Southern Caribbean, so that he is, in a manner of speaking, an alumnus of the University of the Southern Caribbean. And as such, taking on the voice of USC this morning, I would paraphrase what Almighty God said of his son Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. Mr. Harewood is our beloved son, in whom we are well pleased. Listen to him.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. McKenna. You know, some years ago, I was approached for political office in Point Fountain, which I declined. But if I ever to accept, I'll ask you to be my campaign manager, because that was really well done. Thanks for that. It's always good to be here. Let me just acknowledge a few people. Pastor LeFleur, Vice President, it's good to be in your presence today, sir, as well as Pastor Terence Brown, who I consider a mentor and a friend, and somebody I look up to, so I'm happy that he's here. I want to thank the representatives of the Student Life Division, Julian, Guy, who knows me from since the MBA days here at USC, and I think she might be surprised that I turned out all right, because we gave a lot of trouble back in the day. So it's good that we can be here. The members of your student body, who I noted are also here today, I want to recognize you, because I think you're doing a very good thing to be able to represent students at a university level. And I trust you will challenge the university. They don't like to hear me say that, but I think student bodies are supposed to help the university run a lot better. So it's good to be here as well. And then to all the students and people who have decided to participate in today's session, I want to say welcome to you. So I know I am being touted as the featiest speaker, but I just want to deconstruct anything in your mind around an expectation that I will stand here and drone for about 45 minutes and then you will ask questions at the end, right? I am hoping to be more of a facilitator, so I'll use the slides and try to talk to you very naturally, if I can, about stuff. Mr. McKenna, I think I will get in trouble if I don't correct it, right? So I really go to a small church just before Point Fountain in an area called Guapo. It's an old oil town, one I feel very proud of. I was born and grew up in that area. And I've been in that church all my life, right? I got baptized there, married there, and I continue to serve as an elder there for the last 40 years. So when I go to the Point Fountain platform, I'm guesting, right? Point Fountain is where I lived, and I grew up in Point Fountain, but the Point Fountain Church is not my home church, but I love Point Fountain Church, and the people there are like family, so I support them as much as I can. As a matter of fact, this morning I cut short the devotional session to get here in time for 10 o'clock, and I'm happy that God saw me through. The other thing is just to tell you that while I've served in the church a lot in a leadership capacity, from a very young age actually, I also served in the credit union movement in Trinidad and Tobago for about 10 years or so or more. And I also, like I told our church last week, I know I don't look it, but many, many years ago I played competitive basketball. And in some cases I brought tears to the CUC side in church basketball, right? So I have a long history with this campus. But from basketball, I also learned a lot. The only reason I'm telling you that is to say that I learned a lot about leadership from the church, from the credit union movement, and from basketball. And maybe a little bit more than I learned in the stuff that was read out this morning, all right? So I say that to say, if I were to plant a first seed at all this morning, is do not trivialize your engagements that are non-academic, because they may think that they don't add value, but they add tremendous value, right? As a basketballer managing, I tell people basketball was and maybe still is a ghetto sport. And when I played basketball in Point Fountain, it was with the roughnecks of Point Fountain, right? And to get them to do what you wanted, because I moved on into basketball administration, we ran a league in Point for a number of years. To get them to do what you wanted, you had to practice leadership that was more than just hierarchical. It had nothing to do with, I couldn't fire them, I couldn't cut their pay, but I had to get them to work. So it really meant trying to learn to understand people and trying to be able to understand what they do and that sort of thing, right? So I just thought I'll mention that just to give you context. So in terms of the way forward, I would suggest that if you have a question anywhere along my talk and presentation, feel free to raise your hand and stop me, and I'm willing to take questions. Is that all right? Everybody okay with that? Now, I also don't have the benefit of your names, which I would have loved, but maybe another time we'll put name tags on the table, right? But you know my name, and certainly if you put up your hand, I will certainly address you by your proper names. Let me just commend some of the people who went before me. The devotion by, I don't have to call you Pastor or Brother Ramlal, but I thought it was well done. So thank you for that, as well as the Googled written spoken word. I thought that was also well done. And to the young lady who led the icebreaker, I thought you touched on a very important theme, which I'll come back to in today's session, which is about getting to know the people that you lead, all right? So that is something important. And to the young man who persevered, Mr. Powell, I want to commend you as well, because that is also a theme in this presentation about perseverance, which is coming at the very, very end of this session. So that's kind of some basic rocks. The approach today, I don't know if the clicker will work. Well, Dwight, it clearly not working, so I'll depend on you to move ahead. So the next slide, please. Right, the approach today, I hope to pick up in 4 buckets, right? In the first part of the presentation, facilitation, I will want to drive some stakes in the ground, some things about leadership. And for that, I will use some readily available YouTube videos or some popular movies and some other stuff that hopefully make some relevance to you guys, right? Rather than me just droning, and we can look at them and talk about it. And then I would want to talk about organizational leadership, how we run organizations and how we lead organizations. I will then talk about how we lead people, and then I want to close off about leading yourself. You could flip that sequence anywhere. Some people like to talk a lot about leading yourself before they talk about leading organizations, and that's fine, but just know that all 3 are important, right? If you were to conceptualize leadership in a way that you could wrap your mind around it, think about it in the context of leading organizations, leading people, and then leading yourself. All right? And I say then, but some people, and certainly where I sit as a leader, I expect people to first be good leaders of themselves before they try to manage others. Don't come and tell me that people are bad when you yourself give in trouble. Is that okay? Yes. I had a young engineer once reporting to me. He was bright like a bulb. He came out of university with first-class honors. He was qualified in both electrical and mechanical engineering. He was really good, and we gave him a job to do. And I left him on the plan that day. We were hiring one of these huge crane contractors to deliver a very large transformer. The crane alone was costing us $150,000 way back in the day then just to mobilize. And we were paying upwards of $50,000 an hour for it to be there, right? So everything was set in place. The idea was to do the lift early in the morning so that by 3 hours the crane could get out and we don't have to spend a lot of money on the crane. But I had I think it was a license renewal in Point Fountain. So I went to Point that day, and when I came back in the afternoon, as I drove into the yard, I could see the crane still loaded up where we left it in the afternoon. And I went to my office, and my young engineer came to me, and I said, "What's the problem? I thought we lifted this morning." And he said, "Well, he went to the control room, and the operator guys who were there, they gave him a sort of static. And they did tell him they ain't giving him no permit this morning. You can't do that job, and we're helping you." So I looked at him, of course. Now, you have to be careful when people throw other people under the bus, eh? You know that, right? Because sometimes people, when they give you an excuse for not doing something, they deflect the blame from them and blame somebody else. You know that, right? So that as a team leader, I manage managers and a whole department and company. When I walk the floor sometimes, and I ask how we going, and you listen to the lingo, and people start to talk to you, they say, "Well, boss, we were hoping to get this done, but the people in materials didn't order it in time." Well, they just throw them under the bus, right? Because the implication means I must go and light a fire under them, right? So I tell the people that one of the things we'll talk about this morning is about being part of a team. And if you cannot show me that you are part of a team, then I don't think you are ready to be a leader. Is that okay? So my young engineer, he threw the people under the bus, and I said to him, so when the guys told you they weren't going to let you do the lift this morning, and we are still paying for our crane that is now past midday, which means I will have to keep it for the whole day, which carries me way into 500, more than $500,000 for that crane, and I ain't started work yet. I said, what did you do? He said, well, I came up here and wait to tell you. I said, to tell me? I said, if we wanted a reporter, we'd hire a journalist. We hired an engineer, go and make it happen. Today, he is a senior manager at one of the upstream oil companies. And just a few weeks ago, he told me that was the best bit of advice I ever gave him, because he learned to take control and make things happen. Is that all right? So leaders are not allowed to fall back on excuses. I don't want to hear the excuse. I want to hear your options. Is that all right? When you come to me, give me options. Tell me, look, I think we have a problem, yes, but my solution is. And let me tell you that mightn't work. But don't come, otherwise I might as well do the job. Is that all right? So if you're going to be a leader, learn to own it. Everybody all right with that? All right, now let me just say that leadership comes in many forms. And I listened to Pastor LaFleur because I wanted to get a context for today. And I'm sorry I maybe haven't been here before to get a sense of what happened. But clearly he has set the context of preparing you for future formal leadership roles. Is that okay? But I want you to appreciate that leadership occurs at many different levels throughout our society. And not all leaders are formal leaders. There was a guy, Sharma, I remember his name, out of Canada. He had a book that was a hit a few years ago. It's called Leadership Without a Title. In other words, there are people who are informal leaders. I could sense in this room that there are some people who are influencers. If I could use a term that you young people appreciate. And that's not YouTube influencers. That's just simply people who, if you're dealing with a group, you know you have to talk to them first before you get the group to do anything. Is that all right? I ran a church as a young elder. I first became first elder at 21 years old. Struggling. Pastor Brown will tell you we had no pastors in them days. The elder running everything, right? From burying people to dedication to building church. And we were in a church building program. We were struggling to build the church. It was pretty small. I knew it from a child, and we were now investing in building the church. And I became first elder when the program was now started. But every Sunday morning, we announce and set up in church and ask people to come to be ready on a Sunday to do the church building. We got 2 and 3 people, and we couldn't do no work. And I, of course, as a young elder, didn't know better. I went on Sabbath and let go some fire and brimstone sermon on them and tell them if they don't see what the Lord building, how they will burn in hell and thing, right? And the next Sunday, you get about 10. And I realized that ain't sustainable. But then I found out that there were some influencers. One of them was my older brother, who was an AY leader but was kind of in and out of church. And I kind of sat with him and I say, man, if we don't get help to build this church, we will always be spending this money and we never go anywhere, right? So I really needed help. And I bargained with him. So the next Sunday, I took my car and I drove through the community and I picked up every young and able-bodied church member, and they brought some of their friends too. And when they got onto the site, my brother, who would give a lot of trouble in church, but because I had enjoined him in the program, he led the troops. Of course, he led the troops on his terms, right? They would work hard from about 6 in the morning till about 12 midday. They would cast trenches, pull iron, fix stone, whatever. And when about 2 o'clock and we fed them, he would say, that is it, big man, we're going. And I would say, but you have more to do. He said, that is it for the day, big man, don't stretch it. And I learned to work with them and readjust my expectations to allow them to deliver. I'm making the point that sometimes they are informal leaders. Is that okay? And you have to be able to determine whether or not you are an informal leader or a formal leader. We will prepare you to be a formal leader, but there is some value in knowing who the informal leaders are. One of the things that the bio did not say is that all my career, I have managed and worked in unionized companies. And the most predominant union in this country is the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. So Mr. Roger and I have sat across the table, and sometimes the exchanges we have, if that end up in front of the church board, they might disfellowship me. But we have had tough times, right? And one of the things to appreciate is that when you deal with unionized companies, you need to know who the informal leaders are. Because a lot of times, if you stand up as the head of this company and say, we want to do this, everybody watch you with blind faces and they do nothing. So I learned to walk the floor. I learned to find out who the real leaders are. There may be people who carry official union position, but there are those in the crowd among the workers who really have the influence. They are the ones you need to get on your side. They are the ones you need to understand what the issues are. They are the ones you need to bring forward, because if you're going to have collaborative success, then you need them to come aligned and to share your vision. Is that all right? So we begin to understand that there's a shared vision. So let's just talk a few examples quickly about leadership. If you think the name I call is a good leader, just give me a raised hand. If you don't, you could just don't bother, right? So Barack Obama. Yeah, man. Yeah, I know we get good names coming out of that. Mahatma Gandhi. Few names, few hands going up. Were they the same type of leaders? Clearly not, right? Mahatma was much more, wasn't as charismatic in terms of his speeches, but he clearly was able to move an entire nation to independence, right? That's extremely powerful. Serena Williams, is she a leader? No. Who say no? Who does she lead? Who does she lead? She plays a game by herself. Who does she lead? She leads females. Who else does she lead? She leads young people. She's an example. She has her own team of people who support her, who she kind of leads together. Huh? People of color. So that leadership sometimes, leadership is obviously associated with, as we saw on the icebreaker today, associated with followers. But it's important to be able to distinguish who they are leading. Tiger Woods, who does he lead? Who does Tiger lead? Don't tell me them set a woman here. Who else does he lead? Who else does Tiger lead? He leads himself. Is Tiger a leader in your mind? See, you started to get a little bit finicky on me, because you ain't sure. So we had to talk about that, right? About Adolf Hitler, is he a leader? Yes, he is a leader, right? So again, be clear on that. I'm happy you answered that so clearly. Notice I'm bringing it too close home, because otherwise it'll start to get too political on me, right? Because I asked Nicholas Puran, is he a leader? Ooh, nobody put their hand, boy. All the anti-Puran in this place. I had to tell him that, you know. Puran is the captain of the West Indies team, and we don't see him as a leader, boy. What? That's a serious message that I carry back to the CWI, boy. Wow. All right. What about Dwight York? Is he a leader? You all know Dwight York? Right? Played for Trinidad and then played for Aston Villa and then Manchester United, right? Harry Kane. Is Harry Kane a leader? You don't know Harry Kane? But he knows Harry Kane? Yeah, he's the current England captain, right? Hopefully Southgate puts him as a captain in the next week or so. But Harry Kane is, in my mind, a very, very good leader. He watch money football field. I want to suggest to you that if, now you have made a choice here today, because I understand from Julie that you all had a choice and you have chosen to come here today. And I want to commend you for that, because you are showing an interest and an enthusiasm in leadership. You're trying to understand what it is. Is that okay? I want to suggest to you that one of the things you need to start to develop is a sensitivity for leadership. Now, that sensitivity means that you need to debunk any prejudices that you have. Is Kamala Prasad be a leader? Debunk any prejudices that you have, so that you have to kind of start to see things going on in your society and ask yourself, is that an exhibition of leadership, and how is the leadership manifested? You notice that our current Prime Minister has a style where he allows the media to ramage for about weeks. You notice that? And speculate, and then he comes. He likes the knight in shining armor portfolios. He comes after and he holds a meeting with his people, of course, not with objective questioners, right? With his people. And he goes before his tribe and he explains everything, and you say, well, why he couldn't say that all the time? Because he likes to kind of debunk whatever is out there, right? That's his leadership style. Is that all right? But of course, he then creates a following when he does that. Everybody all right with that? So I wanted to start, as an electrical engineer, I have a curse because I cannot walk into a building and not notice electrical things. Like I saw a light up there that is just hanging a little bit and not fully recessed in its place. And I wonder if it will fall. The only reason I saw it is because I'm an electrical engineer, right? And sometimes I do design work on buildings and have to look about lights. Right? I work on a plant, but I see it. Is that all right? Because I've developed a sensitivity to that. I have gone to funerals and sat down in the people crematorium and wonder about electricity for the crematorium, right? And what kind of supply comes into the building. Is that okay? So it's important to understand that if you're going to be a leadership practitioner, and all of you should see yourselves as leaders, then you need to become sensitive to leadership and start to analyze how leadership is happening on the world stage. So we're going to look at a few videos. Next slide, please, Dwight. We're going to look at a few videos as I drive these stakes. Next one. Where we will try to pick up something. First of all, I want you to appreciate that there is no magic formula for leadership. One size does not fit all. When you heard of that? Leadership is situational. And that is going to be a recurring theme in what I talk about this morning. What may be applicable to a certain group of people is not applicable to another group of people because they have a different orientation. The guys in the military struggle with that. So we had Oliver North, who was a general in the army in the US in the 90s. I mean, he commanded troops and sent commandos to go to battle. But when they brought him into government under Reagan, and he tried to fund the Contra in Nicaragua to overthrow Daniel Ortega, who, by the way, is now the president of Nicaragua, when he was then a rebel. And they tried to overthrow him. The methods he used, they dragged him before the US Congress, and they tore him apart. And Oliver North was struggling because he was so accustomed to chain of command. If I say to do it, you do it. But now he is in a different world where he's being challenged. Is that okay? And that is important. I have struggled with that myself because I once worked with another company. And I remember one day taking a walk in the facility. And I almost tripped on a walkway. As I walked, I stumbled. And the manager who was working with me, I said to her, we need to fix this, because somebody could trip. But we continued walking because that wasn't the object, I was just doing my stuff. And a few weeks later, I saw a set of work going on in the yard, thing digging up, tractor, gravel pouring. So I said, oops, what's going on outside? They say, well, you say fix the thing. I say fix the thing. I say, I feel we need to fix it, but I expect somebody to sit down and do some analysis and figure it out. Is that all right? So they were accustomed to the great man theory of leadership, where the one who is on top is endowed with this aura of invincibility, and what he says goes, right? Now, I came from a unionized environment where what I said was challenged. And the men would watch me and say, who tell you we're going to do that? And if you couldn't explain it to them, they're not going to do it, right? Roger is not only belligerent on the TV screen, he's belligerent in private too. So he used to give me real pressure. And you had to kind of work with them and try to get them going. As you heard in my bio, I function in a lot of leadership roles. But when I get home, if I don't pour the garbage, a different leadership style approaches me, And I get cussed. Yeah, and say, you're not no president here, Take it out. You understand? And I get that pressure when I don't put on the toilet seat. I get a leadership style imposed on me that has no respect for my qualifications. She said, "You're not making ammonia here, you know, get that out. Sort that out." And you have to kind of recognize that some styles are different. Or my goodly wife, and maybe she might not take too kindly to me using her as an example here, but anyway, she is a teacher, primary school teacher. She was anyway. She recently retired at a young age. So when we first got married, and I gave that story a few times, when we got home, I would detect a tone in the way she spoke to me, you know. Move that. See what that. So it took me a while, you know, to let kind of sink in. And then one day I said, "Permission, please, miss. I am not one of your students." Change the tone. And she understood that when she's at home is a different situation to when she's at school. Is that all right? So I'm saying to you that situational leadership is a key part of understanding leadership. Don't try to mimic people. Don't say, "Well, I want to be a leader like Dr. Rowley." Dr. Rowley is in a situation where that works for him. But in your space, that may or may not work. Some people are amenable to a leader who is a technical, competent leader and who want the leader to give them all the answers. Some people do not want a leader with all the answers. They want a leader who can just give them policy direction and they go and do what they have to do. Is that okay? So let's move on and look at a few clips. Next slide, please. I am pulling from a movie called Remember the Titans. Anybody see that? Right, thank you. Remember the Titans is a Disney movie. Just pause it a little bit, Dwight. Let me just get the context. It's a Disney movie with Denzel Washington. So I hope that alone attracts your interest. But it's a story about the T.C. Williams High School that in Virginia, North Virginia, the U.S., in 1971. 1971 would have been, and I heard somebody said, I think it's Pastor LeFleur, that the campus is normally a place to query and challenge things, right? And I like that because I always believe that your university life cannot be seven forms. It's not another form of A-levels or O-levels. University, you need to question. You need to ask, see how things going, right? So in the 1970s in Trinidad, we were going through the Black Power Revolution that started at St. Augustine University campus. But in the US, they were coming on the back of what was a desegregation movement, where they were integrating schools with black and white. And so for some schools, they were still doing that for the first time. And T.C. Williams was one of those schools that were very good, had a very good American football program, but they were now integrating black students into the school. They were busting them into the school. Is that okay? And they had to work with them. So they struggled. On top of that, they were now receiving a black football coach for the first time. You get any context? So here is a school that excels as a football team with white players who are well respected in the community. They are integrating black people for the first time who live in the same community, but who never had the opportunity to come to a school like T.C. Williams. And on top of that, to add insult to injury, their normal coach is gone, and they are finding themselves a new coach called Herman Boone, who is played by Denzel Washington. And he is the coach who is meeting the team for the first time. My tagline is to tell you that leadership is about being part of the team. You all right with that? Yes. And that's why I told you I have to be careful about language. Because I have some managers sometimes who come to me and they say, "Boss, we trying to see them people are hard working, boy, there's trouble. Once you start that, I'm kicking you out more office. Or I'm trying to put a circle around your name because it looks like I need to work on you. You come to complain about your people, but you're saying more about yourself than your people. Is that okay? Leadership is about part of the team. Sink or float, you have to be part of the team. Is that all right? So if the team didn't do well, you didn't do well. It can't be that you are the best thing since sliced bread and the team bad. It means that you are not good. Is that okay? So it is important to understand that leadership is about being part of the team. Let's take the clip, please, Dwight.
You look like a bunch of 5th grade sissies after a cat fight. You got anger, that's good. You're gonna need it, son. You got aggression, that's even better. You're gonna need that too. But any little 2-year-old child can throw a fit. Football is about controlling that anger, harnessing that aggression into a team effort to achieve perfection. When you put that uniform on, that Titan uniform, you better come to work.
I think you're nothing. Nothing but a pure waste of God-given talent. You don't listen to nobody, man. You can't run over everybody in this league. And every time you do, you leave one of your teammates hanging out to dry. What was that, Ray? Whatever it is, it ain't blocking.
Give me a break.
You want a break? I'll give you a break. Me and Julius...
Wait a minute, just let them
Get
handle
to
this.
ref once, just one time. I swear to God, I'm gonna hit you so hard by the time you come to, ooh, boy, you're gonna need a new haircut. You understand me? Let's play, fellas. Campbell. Yeah, I love me a little contact, Petey. Left side. Strong side. Left side. Strong side. Left side. Strong side. Left side. Left side. Let me ask you something, Mr. Campbell.
Uh-huh.
What kind of power you got?
Oh, man, you know I got some soul power.
What kind of power you got?
What kind of question is that? I got soul power.
Yes, you do.
Right on. Let me ask you something, Mr. Fortier.
Yes.
How strong are you?
I'm too strong.
What? How strong?
I'm too strong. Too strong.
Right on.
I want a victory.
Oh, I want a victory.
I want a victory.
I want a victory.
You want victory?
Right, thanks. Still has more? Let's see. I think that's the end of it, thanks. We go to the next one after. A few quick points, right? In American football, which I know a lot of us don't follow, I hope you don't and you follow soccer. Real football, not what they call football. But in American football, the traditional leader is the quarterback. We know about Tom Brady. We know about Russell Wilson. Right? We know about Patrick Mahomes. Those are the guys who get the money. That is the real official leaders of the team. But the defensive linebacker, which is the big man, sometimes you get prejudiced views, right? I once met some people and they say, you real big boy, I make a nice linebacker. They assume I had a brain, right? They just say, good linebacker, right? I long time in the village, you grow up and they get tall and they say, you will make a good policeman, boy. Because I assume you could hold people and beat them, right? So sometimes, and that's what the lady was teaching us this morning, Miss Martin, that we mustn't judge a book by its cover, right? 1 Samuel 16 for those of you in the church. All right, so the linebacker has a lot of authority because they're the defensive team and they're the ones who stop players from getting damaged. Is that okay? And they could see the whole field and make the plays. So in this clip, the white guy, the tall, strapped one, and the black guy, they are the two powerful linebackers. But they are juggling for position because I told you the context. And by the way, let me put another stake in the ground. Context drives behavior. If you're taking notes, take that. Context drives behavior. If you want to understand people, understand their context. Because what might be applicable in one context is not applicable in another. Is that okay? So he wants to integrate the team, but to get them integrated, they first start a fight. That's what the first clip is, they start a fight. But he moves them to understanding that they must have a common objective. And sometimes what we need to remind our team members, notwithstanding diversity, and I love to know I have a diverse team. I don't want everybody to nod their heads and say the same thing. We want people to have different views. As a leader, you must not be afraid of being challenged. If you don't like to be challenged, you're really not ready to be a leader. Because challenging is what brings out alternative options, yes? So as he challenges them to find a common objective, the common objective is to be a winning team. And so because they are so obsessed with the common objective, they forget their prejudices. Is that okay? If you're going to lead people, ask yourself, what is the objective? What are we trying to achieve? Stop trying to harmonize team members. Stop trying to pick people like yourself. But understand that you are placed in a diverse situation. A man came here 2,000 years ago and he picked 12 disciples and all of them were different. And one of them actually betrayed him and get him killed. Right? So the fact is, we must welcome diversity, but we must coalesce diversity around a common objective. Is that all right? Yeah. And as these guys started to spend more time together and harmonize around the objective, the team chemistry became better. And soon they started, notice the clip where they were pushing each other, the two guys, and started to hit each other. I told you context-driven behavior. In a normal world, that would look like real aggressive behavior, and it should stop them. But for linebackers, that is almost an animal instinct to say, we okay. And so the coaches, if you watch the coaches in the club, they're smiling, you know, because they're leaving them, because they're realizing that they are building a togetherness. Is that okay? Let's go to the next one, because we have a few I want to get through, and I know we're running out of some time. Let's go quickly. The next one comes from the same movie, so I don't need to give you context.
Well, I'm Coach Boone. I'm going to tell you all about how much fun you're going to have this season. This is no democracy. It is a dictatorship. I am the law. If you survive camp, you will be on the team. If you survive. Now you think you're doing these boys a favor, taking them aside every time I come down, protecting them from Big Bad Boone. You challenge my authority in front of the entire football team, Coach. You're cutting my legs from under me. You ain't doing these kids a favor by patronizing. You're crippling them. You're crippling them for life. Now I may be a mean cuss, but I'm the same mean cuss with everybody out there on that football field. Each one of you will spend time every day with a teammate of a different race. You will learn about him and his family, his likes, his dislikes. You'll report back to me until you meet every one of your teammates. If we don't come together right now on this hollow ground, we too will be destroyed. Just like they were. I don't care if you like each other or not, but you will respect each other. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you will learn to play this game like men.
Is this even about football anymore? Or is it just about you?
I'm a winner. I'm going to win.
Everything's not always about winning and losing.
You think I was blinded by my own ambition? Maybe I pushed them too hard. Boys are doing all that you can do. Anybody can see that. Win or lose, we're gonna walk out of this stadium tonight with our heads held high. Do your best. That's all anybody can ask for.
I know football. What you did with those boys. You were the right man for the job, Coach.
Okay, so again, situational leadership, right? Notice that Denzel Washington starts off the first clip saying he's the leader, he's the autocrat, he's the dictator. What he says goes. Obviously, for football, you need to have some sort of autocratic mechanism because you don't want people to be second-guessing what you tell them to do. Is that okay? We manage a process plant in Point Lisas. I don't know many of you have been to Point Lisas, but Point Lisas is a huge place, and we run some very dangerous operations where we take natural gas and we pass it through complex operations, and we produce ammonia, which is used for fertilizer and feeds the world, right? So it's a huge process, but it's a dangerous process. High pressures, high temperatures, explosions that can happen with natural gas. When we train operators to operate the plant, because the plant runs 24/7, and a supervisor is in charge of our group, we like to remind them that the supervisor has quasi-military command. If the supervisor tells you go out and close a valve, you go and close a valve. You don't stop and argue with him and say, I don't feel we should close that one, we should close that next one, because he has the responsibility and he has the accountability to me. Is that okay? If an incident occurs on the site, then I take on the role of what is called incident commander. And so I come to the site, I take my radios and my phones, and I call down to the ship. And if we say we need to close a tank, then I do expect somebody to be challenging, boss, we shouldn't close that now. They must follow the incident commander. There are times when autocracy is required, and you need it. You don't want to be questioning that. But notice that the coach changes. He shifts his dimension, if you will. And he comes to the end and he kind of says, well, let's get them together. Let's hear what they want to do and get them apart. And then on top of that, he is also recognizing that while he has this obsession to win, he is adjusting his obsession to deal with his circumstances. So in the end, he says, if you go out there and you just play your best, we'd have won just by doing that. Well, the guys went on and they won. That team, actually, why it became a movie, is that that team went unbeaten for the entire season in 1971. They never lost a game. They came from a year before, they were losers, to when they integrated with black players and they had a black coach, they became an unbeaten team in the entire country. And that is something that really went down in history, right? The other thing I wanted to talk about is about learning to subject or to put aside your selfish ambitions if you are part of a team. Team and selfish ambitions are incompatible. You okay with that? Because if you're trying to use the team for your own glory, then it's not a team. So I want to talk, for that one, I want to use another recent example. Anybody here follows American basketball, NBA? I hope so, right? That one a bit more popular. So one of the best teams, oh well, maybe not the best team, one of the more popular teams in America is the Los Angeles Lakers, right? And for those of us who grew up in the days of Showtime basketball with Magic Johnson, I still have goosebumps when I think about those days, right? But anyway, the Lakers now are a shadow of themselves. Bad team. They're losing, even though they have presumably the best player in the world, LeBron James, right? So they got a new player. Anybody know the new player name? His name is Russell Westbrook. You know Westbrook? All other teams Westbrook played for, he was the number one man. Scored the most triple, right? He actually got MVP of the league, most valuable player of the league, right? Russell Westbrook is a scoring machine. You take Russell Westbrook and you put him into the Lakers, and he's struggling. As a matter of fact, he's struggling so much last year that when he started this year, people started to say, trade him. Magic Johnson and others in the community of Los Angeles say, get rid of that man. When he started this season, a few months ago in October, when he started to play, the crowd will boo him. And they would start to chant, get him out, whenever he touched the ball. Russell Westbrook, a man who as an individual is considered to be one of the best players in the world, is struggling when they put him on a team. Is that okay? But Lakers got a new coach this year. His name is David Ham. He used to be a player himself. And everybody told him, get rid of Westbrook. He said, no, I want Westbrook. And I will keep him. And then he came to Russell after about the first month of the league, a few weeks ago. And he said to him, I don't want you to start anymore. Now, Russell Westbrook, for the last 1,000+ games in the NBA, which goes back to almost 3 to 4 years, or more than that, has always started when the game started. The coach came to him and said, I want you to come off the bench. It was a blow to him personally. But then a few weeks ago, they played a game, and they were losing bad this year. But a few weeks ago, Russell Westbrook came off the bench as a substitute. scored the most points on the team that night, and Lakers won our game, right? Listen to the coach after the game talking to the press about that. Let's play that one right.
Darvin, there was a point, I think in the third or fourth quarter, Russ had hit a three. He was running a pretty good shift. And as he came off the bench, you had, you guys were pressing your heads together, looked like you were saying something. You don't have to tell me verbatim what you said, but what were the sentiments? And furthermore, what was it like to see him just after a week ago, what happened here, just feel the love from the crowd in his hometown?
I told him he's going to thrive, man. Just trust me. Trust me, I always told him, your sacrifice, man, a player of your magnitude, for you to do this, it's going to send waves. It's going to help our team. And I said, you can't look at it like everybody gets so caught up in the starting. If I remember correctly, he finished the game, right? And so it's like, dude, I'm putting you in a position where you're going to come off and you're just going to lead a charge, a whole new wave. And it helped tonight. Like, he's helping us in so many areas coming off the bench, like scoring, rebounding, assists. He's giving those other guys, Austin and those other guys, confidence. Matt confidence, like Winion. So it's tailor-made, in my opinion, for our group as it's built for him to be in that role and then, gain his rhythm. And then now when Brian, ADR, our starters come back on the floor, he's in a good mood. He's in a good mix because he's playing and competing at a very high level. And our guys see that once they sit down and say, okay, he's taking it up a notch, so I can't come back in and be the one to ruin it. And so I'm so happy for him, man. He's last couple of games in Minnesota and tonight, he's been phenomenal. Nothing short of amazing. And I think I'm so happy, man. I know I can't even imagine what that kid is going through, man. One of the biggest things about me getting this job was for him to get that respect that he deserved, because a lot of what went on last year was not his fault. And everything, all the blame was placed on him. And so I told him, man, just listen to me, believe in me, bro. I'm gonna put you in a position to succeed with the group, but you have to put the group first. It can't be about me or I or mine. It's got to be us, ours, we, and he's done that.
Thanks. I need to say anything about that? I mean, that is so clear. I wanted you to understand that I'm picking examples, well, in this case from real life. The other one was a movie, right? But this is real. This is a professional sports, and I always like to pay attention to professional sports, because professional sports is where the best examples of leadership exist. You feel it's the corporate world, but these guys are getting millions of dollars. They could become prima donnas and do what they want. I don't have to listen to anybody. A coach who comes in there and gets them to follow a plan has to understand leadership. Is that okay? And so he understands that he wants to convey to Russell Westbrook that if the group succeeds, you succeed. And therefore, leadership is not about individual performance, but leadership is about letting a team do well. Is that okay? So when some of you earlier this morning told me that Serena Williams is a leader because she leads colored people and she leads women, I like that. Because even though she's in an individual sport, you have found a way to recognize her leadership off the court. Is that okay? And similarly, when you look at professional teams, football and all that kind of thing, and you see them come together and perform, it brings you to realize, at a point where you realize that you can achieve team success if you have the right leadership. And leadership, therefore, becomes important. Leadership is not a trivial thing. Leadership is not something that you just kind of happen. There was a huge debate running some years ago because our former Prime Minister, Eric Williams, in his book, Inward Hunger, he said some men are born great and some men have greatness thrust upon them, right? As he started his autobiography. And it's important because some people believe that leadership is some sort of intrinsic genetic criteria you're born with. They say some people like to say he's a born leader. Well, I am not a fan of that. Leadership is taught. Leadership can be learned, but you have to make the effort to learn it. And then you have to marry your personality with the leadership style and with the circumstances and bring all that together. Darvin Ham has a different style to the previous coach. Is that okay? And so the Lakers were able to find a coach whose persona and whose ability to identify with the player on the field was more important, to the point where he could bring the whole group together to make them successful. They're not out of the woods yet. They're still losing a few games. But I have a sense that, as a matter of fact, this week I was watching basketball on TV. And when Russell Westbrook now gets the ball, you know what the crowd chants? MVP, MVP. A few weeks ago they were saying, get rid of him, you know. But now that he has found a different role, and he's found himself putting aside his expectations for the team, the people who he is representing, they value that, and they now see him as somebody important. Is that all right? I have 2 more videos, but I won't go to them. If we can go right to the 3rd slide in this series. Just keep going. Yes. Let's go up again. Right. In the book, The Mind of a Leader, 2 Harvard professors, Haggard and Carter, I believe, they recognize that leadership is about organizational leadership, how you run organizations, how you run people, and how you run yourselves. I want to run through that very quickly, right? Let's go to the next slide, please. So as we talk organizational leadership, it's important to realize that leaders are sometimes meant to lead organizations through treacherous times and difficult periods. Everybody all right with that? There's no smooth sailing. There's no time when the organization will always be doing well. Things will go wrong. And you have to be able to figure out how to deal with that. So our next slide, we want to understand the world in which we're leading. If you go on to the next slide, please, right. So if you go to the world in which we are in now, and these are just a few things I've pulled out. But for us in the Caribbean and the West Indies, it's important to appreciate climate change. Is that okay? That's a real issue facing our region. And we here in Trinidad, we had a kind of machismo about that, right? We say, well, I for them small islands out in the sea who take in strain Dominica, and we feel sorry for them and we send food for them. But over the last few weeks, we begin to understand climate change ourselves. And so we've been starting to see phenomenal flooding. And I live in the south, and I understand. I have employees who tell me they can't come to work because they just can't come out of their house. And you have to figure out how to work around that. Is that okay? And even our plant in Point Lisa has accessed it. We have a group text to all our employees to let them know when the road is flooded and they simply cannot access the facility. And then as the chairman of the Point Lisa estate CEOs, yesterday morning I got a text from one of the power companies in the estate, which is one of the major power producers for this country, and the whole entrance to their place was full of water. And we were worried that the generators would go down, and the little blackouts you've been seeing recently could have become a national blackout all over again, right? So the point I want to make is that the world is changing. The world is going through a significant amount of climate change conversations and tension. And therefore, if you're going to lead in this space, you need to be aware of that. Just be aware of it. And ask yourself, what in the organization that you are leading, assuming you're leading a corporate organization, what is your responsibility towards this phenomena? How do you position the company around that? How do you deal with this issue? What is your contribution? And if you say, well, we are into groceries, and therefore we sell groceries as a retailer, and that doesn't matter to us, well, it does, because the products that reach into your vegetable mart comes from the farmers who could be flooded out and could not be able to give you the scarce stuff. Is that okay? So there's a nexus to what is going on in the environment and how you position your company. If you're an organizational leader, you have to pay attention to that. If you're an organizational leader, you must appreciate that technology has now become a global mass event. Everybody has access to technology. And it is spreading a mile a minute. So if you're going to manage that, you need to understand that. If you're going to walk down the corridor and curse out your employee, make sure he didn't have his cell phone on and you're not on Instagram next week. You understand what I'm saying? Because the technology has changed. It has become a mass event. And it's a good thing, but you have to manage in that context. Is that all right? You have to manage in a context where data analytics becomes extremely important. So much data comes at us every day. We must be able to go into the data and see what it is telling us. Because if you're going to run an organization and you don't understand the data analytics, then you might as well be a blind man walking on the road. Because the data will tell you whether you're in the right place or not. And some people like to only focus on the big results. Well, we are making our profit and we stuff, but you sometimes need to do more than that. If you're managing people, how many of your people are in a demographic where they will retire the next few years? Or how many of them are in a young age and they could be taken by somebody else? What are you doing about retention? How are you managing that? If you are dealing with a high-risk environment, how many accidents are you having? How much damage is occurring? Sometimes you have to reprogram your thoughts. Data analytics taught me to change my thoughts around safety. I am a strong advocate, at least I was anyway, of zero incidents. I believe that you could run a company with zero incidents. No lost time injury, no incidents, right? And for years I preached that. I remember when I was working when I was head of Power Gen, I went to the power plant on Rising Road, the one that is now shut down, with the towers that they took down. And my office was around Queen's Park, Savannah, and I got in my car and I drove to the plant and I put on my coveralls and I didn't tell anybody I was coming, I just walked through the gate and I took a walk around the plant. They were doing some work. And there was a young guy there working for a contractor company and he had on his coveralls and his hat, no glasses, and no hearing protection. And he was working below a boiler doing some work with stuff that could fall in his eyes. So I walked past him and I said, "Soldier, put your glasses on." And I thought I was the end of that. He said, "Big man, what's the story? What are you asking me for?" He said, "You the safety man here?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, if you're not the safety man, you can't tell me what to wear." I said, "Right, boss." So I left him. And I go around the corner and I meet one of the engineers. I said, "Tell the plant manager, I'm a man here who define our rules, and I don't know why he's still here." So every time I finish my walk and I come back and they were escorting him outside, he said, "Big man, if he's the boss, why didn't tell me he was the boss?" So I am a believer in safety as, so when I went to this new job at Point Lisas, my current HSSC manager, Health, Safety and Security and Environmental Manager, she came to me with this new concept that is emerging around human and organizational performance. And one of the premises of that, or one of the 5 pillars of that approach is to suggest that people make mistakes. And then she said to me, if people make mistakes, Mr. Harewood, we need to not put these 0 KPIs because something is going to happen and we have to be ready to deal with it, right? So it was a shift in thinking. It was a thinking that went from preventing to being resilient and managing and being tough enough so that when the mistakes occur, they are not high risk and they don't cause major damage. And I fought with that in my head, mentally. And I told her I ain't accepting that, struggling. And every 2 weeks, she'd come in my office and we'd have these philosophical arguments. And she would say, "I can't roll it out any further if you don't believe in it." And I said, "Well, we had a hold on that and we'll keep telling people, walk the straight line, keep on your stuff, and that kind of thing. And keep pushing on them compliance rather than understanding how they work, right?" Until I went to put gas in my vehicle. I drive a diesel van, diesel SUV. And I pull up in the gas station in San Fernando Crossing, one of the Unipet gas stations. By the way, the Unipet CEO is also an ex-alum of USC Andrews MBA. We were in the same year here. But anyway, so I pull up in the gas station, and I pull up next to the pump, and I put my card in to pay, and then I put the pump into my car, the gun into my car, and the nozzle, and I started to run, and I noticed it was reaching about $300 and something, and I normally fill my van with, well, in those days, like before there's 2 or 3 increases. I would normally fill my van about $250, right? And I couldn't understand. So when I looked, I realized I was putting gasoline in my diesel vehicle. I don't know how many of you had the science around that. but diesel is fuel injected, right? Even though the gasoline is that now. But the jets are different. And the onboard computer recognizes a disruption in the fuel to the point where it will shut down your car, right? And that it can also disrupt the jets to the point where if you have to change them, it's about $20,000 to change it. So I stopped, froze, and I called my mechanic and I said, I think I just made a mistake. And I put gas in my diesel van, and he said, don't move. Leave it right there. And they sent a wrecker. The wrecker picked it up from right there. Of course, there was no room in the wrecker for me, so I had to jump in my van. And I on top of the van going through San Fernando. I feel well self-conscious. I feel everybody seeing me because man, I'm being taking me on, but I feel everybody see me in this van. Say, look at this big CEO, he getting 2 away because he do some nonsense with the car. And when they got to the place, all they had to do was flush it out, put back in some diesel, flush again, and it cost me about $800 compared to $20,000. I remember the next day and I called my HSSC manager and I said, let's roll out. Because I now understand that people could make mistakes. Because I myself made a mistake. Is that all right? So I'm saying to you that when you're in an organization, and she started to bring the data to me, the data showed that despite some of the big companies, the BPs and the Shells, despite their best efforts to bring incidents down, incidents were still happening because it's not about compliance and regimentation. People make mistakes. And if they make a mistake, do you have the tolerance and the robustness in your systems? That's what organizational leadership is about. Have you created a system and approach that allows you to manage that? Now, of course, that is a far cry from if your admin told the final year student they had no more money to pay when they really owed the university money, right? And they started to go up. That's a real mistake, right? And that could cause a lot of hurt. But if that happens, what do you do? And so the other thing about leadership is to be able to deal with what is in front of you and don't run away. I don't like leaders who are fearful. You have to find solutions, all right? There's a lot of growth in science. There's a lot of disruptive technologies going on around the place. And then, of course, there's a heavy focus on health and wellness and services, etc. Next slide, please. So what is important is to learn to be intimate with your business. I ain't telling you to follow Patrice and drink water and mind your business. But you have to know your business. If you're going to be in the hotel business, you have to know about hotel business. If you're going to be in the car industry, you have to know about car industry. Next slide, please, Dwight. You have to understand your business. Whenever I talk about intimacy in your business, I like to talk about David and Goliath. But David and Goliath, not from the way we were accustomed to, but from Malcolm Gladwell's perspective, who is a prize-winning journalist based in New York, who looked at the question of underdogs. And Malcolm Gladwell disaggregated the David and Goliath story and suggested that the real underdog in that story was Goliath, not David. Because David was what you call a projectile warrior. And David had spent years in the wilderness fighting lion and bear with a sling. For David hitting at something far off, feet away, thousands of yards away was not an issue because he accustomed doing it. Is that okay? So that while Goliath came to the battle, expecting hand-to-hand combat, like he told them, the Israelites, he says, send me that I may crush his bones. Remember that? But David wasn't interested in no hand-to-hand battle. David ran towards Goliath, not away from him, no. He ran towards Goliath, and as he closed the distance in the valley of Elah, he let go his sling, and he hit Goliath exactly where he wanted him. We like to, as preachers, we like to go up there and talk about God has guided David, and God made this thing. David was an accomplished projectile warrior who was carrying out a fight on behalf of Israel. If you're going to live in that world that I just talked about, which people call a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, VUCA. If you're going to live in that world that we're talking about, know your business. Become intimate with your craft. If you are a teacher, be the best teacher you could be. Understand the dynamics of how students learn, how they pay attention, what is important to them. If you're going to be an accountant, understand the standards and know what is important for your local area and be able to talk authoritatively on it. Are you beginning to understand me? If you're going to be a musician, then you have to be the best musician there is. And you have to understand the intricacies of that and be able to deal with it in a particular way that will really be able to speak to the nuances of the business. Is that okay? Generalization, don't cut it. You have to be specific. Patrick Manning and Ronald Reagan were two leaders who believed in generalization. Ronald Reagan said, of course he was an actor who became president, and he picked people because he felt he could trust them, and not because they had any special skill in the area, and he put them in areas. Manning was one who believed in that at that point in time. And so Manning used to say that if you have common sense and good work ethic, you could manage any ministry. Well, now, over the years, that theory has fallen by the wayside. And people now realize that leaders of organizations must know the business. So you can't get away from it. You can't be running a church and you don't know how to run a church. Is that okay? You can't be a grocer and you're selling in a grocery. You know, people say, well, a good thing is just to put up a grocery. Well, where's your supply chain? Where does it come from? Who are the farmers who will make sure you always have produce on your shelf exactly when you want it, and it doesn't spoil and you have it just in time? What are the quantitative equations you're going to work to determine the exact amount you need, and not too much or not too little to frustrate the customer, and not too much to make it go rotten on you and you lose out? How do you determine that? How do you determine how many people come through the door so that you make sure you have enough people at the counter and cashiers to manage them? Those are technical issues that are dealt with quantitative equations. Do you know that, all that stuff, right? So if you're going to get into grocery, then you have to know that. The message is that if you're going to fight the giants in this world, learn to sling. Because the giants will kill you and they will crush you. But if you have these sling skills, you could deal with that, right? Next slide, please. The other one I want to talk about is Sullenberger. Same message. Captain Sullenberger, Chelsea Sullenberger, was the captain of the American flight, Pan American flight, that was flying from, I think, Newark, New Jersey, to Washington, D.C. And when he left on the plane ingested, I like to say ingested, a flock of birds into all the two wings, the two engines, and they mash up. So this passenger plane with 150 people on board, and that was just a few years ago, it was flying and just started to get its ascent going when it lost its engines, and they had to make a decision. And this captain, who doesn't get enough praise, was able to land a 747 on a river, the Hudson River, the cold Hudson River. And he was able to glide the plane into position, allow it to land, and everybody was saved. Nobody lost their lives. 150 persons. Is that okay? They call it the miracle on the Hudson River, right? If you go back, my brother is not here, but if you go back and check Sister Google, she'll give you a whole layout of that, right? The miracle on the Hudson River. Now, there's a movie, you could go on Netflix and look for it, called Sully, that speaks to this. And you would look at the National Transportation Board, almost on cue he comes back, right? The National Transportation Board, they basically try to make him look like a bad person. But in truth and in fact, he's a hero. Why is he a hero? You know why? Captain Sully Sullenberger, on weekends, he lives in the Midwest in the US. So even though he's flying in the New York side and the tri-state area, he lives in the Midwest US. And on weekends, he's been doing this for years. On weekends, he's a glider pilot. You know what a glider pilot does? It's these fixed-wing planes with no engines. They get some locomotive to carry it up to a high area, and then they pull it off the cliff, and they learn to adjust the flaps and things, and they guide it down to sea. He does that every weekend as a hobby for the last 20-something years. You appreciate it? You talk that he was the underdog. He is able to land a plane on the Hudson because he had developed a skill set that was needed when the crisis occurred. You right with that? If you're going to be a leader, know your business. Don't tell me, sometimes I have been, because I function as an HR manager for about 3 years with the OWTU. Sometimes HUMAT, Society of Human Resources, Trinidad and Tobago. Sometimes they call me to do some talks to them, and they always profile it to say how you can move from HR to CEO. And I like to tell them I am not a normal HR manager because I'm an engineer by profession and I know the business I'm in. And so the message is, if you're going to be a CEO, forget which stream you come from. Whether it's HR, accounting, engineering, whatever, you have to know the business. Because nobody's going to make you in charge of their business and report to shareholders and you don't know what's going on. You have to be able to answer the questions. You have to be able to talk around the nuances of the business. And so I want to let you know that if you're going to manage an organization and lead an organization, get to know it intimately. Spend the hours. These skills that you learn in university, to learn to study and write paper, don't feel it's only to pass the exam. Those skills are transferred when you go out in industry. And if you cannot write when you go out in the industry, then you're in real trouble. And I have a lot of my engineers who I struggle with that. Because they come into my office and they give me a long lecture and say, boss, the pump only breaking up and the seal falling off, and we think we need to have a new set of seals because these new seals we saw on our video and we went to a symposium and they're real good, and if we put that instead, the pump ain't gonna mash up. And I say, send me a paper. And you start to see them walking around dejected. The CEO is what paper. Because if you can't write it, I'm not buying it. You understand what I'm saying? Make an argument. Show me on paper, objectively, without emotion, how much we lost, what we can gain from this, what is the history from others who have used it, what is the payback period if we were to put it on this plant, what it will do for us in terms of improved performance. If I can't see those documents, then I'm not approving it. You know, when I was at Petrotrin, and people badmouth Petrotrin, but I want to say it maybe here and other places. Petrotrin had real good people, right? Real talented professionals. So I was in charge of the tender committee as president. And the tender committee is where the large contracts come up. And I had to adjudicate on those. Apparently, the CEO before me would depend upon the technocrats in the room to advise him as to whether there is a tender we should agree with. So they would send these huge board packs of papers to read before the tender. Sometimes they send it the night before the tender, which you know is a strategy to we cannot read it. And bring it into the room and then say, we want to award to so-and-so. Of course, the consequence of that is that when they hit the fan and the parliament call you to account for how they spend the government money, the tender happened under with your signature, but you never know what happened, right? So I used to read the documents. And some nights I would leave the office 9, 10 o'clock in the night. And when I go home, I would still read till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But when I got to the meeting the next day, I had a list of questions. I remember the first time I did that, the room stopped and they watched me. And a man said, like, the president read the document well. And I say, yes, because I'm not signing nothing that will get me in trouble, right? I need to know what's going on. And I'm saying to you today that if you're going to run organizations, know the business. Now, the challenge with that is that sometimes we like to know other people's business and not our own. So we could all tell what our next department not doing. But it's important to know what your department's supposed to do. I like to talk about grow where you are planted. Know what you have to do and do it well. Some years ago, I keep giving you these examples and I will try to finish just now, Julie. Right, but some years ago, as I worked as an assistant manager at Yara, still doing engineering, we had some work to do on some cables that were there from a long time ago, and we had to take them out. And when we planned the job, we really didn't have resources to supervise in the night. So I had to come out. And I had to work about a week straight from 7 in the night to 7 in the morning, right? And night work might look nice until you do about the first 3 days. And then your eyes start to burn you and you're driving home with your eye and things hitting you and you're feeling tired, right? So about the 5th day, I was in engineering. I passed through to the supply chain, materials procurement department. And I saw the guy there. He was a former engineer who was now in charge of the department. And I said, I want to come in your department because I feel I can make manager faster here and I could make it outside there being an engineering manager. And he watched me, he's a Jamaican partner of mine, and he says, "You're interested in ascendancy or competence?" And I hit me like a ton of bricks, eh? He said, if you focus on competence, ascendancy will come. And I kind of take that in my craw. I went home and I think about it. And in a few years' time, I reached a point where some of the very people who I reported to were not reporting to me, right? Because I had focused on knowing the business and being competent. If you grow where you are planted, opportunities will come. Nobody is going to want a leader who don't know the business, because people see through you. Stephen Covey says, "Who you are speaks so loudly in my ears, I hardly hear what you say." So if you're not going to demonstrate capacity and competence, they're not going to listen to you. Is that okay? David Ham, the Lakers coach, is a former player. Because he's a former player, he could relate to players. And he's able to talk to them in a particular way. So you have to leverage your competencies to develop your leadership skills. Next slide. I don't think we have any more on that organizational one, do we? Oh, this one. This is just a quick example. Frogs on a pole. Notice this comes from the Trinidad Guardian, where TNTech is saying that frogs are causing the power lines to trip. Now, I find that interesting because in the late 1980s, I was a project engineer for building out electric lines to go to the oil wells in a huge area in Point Fountain, where the company was building more wells, right? So we hired contractors, multi-million-dollar project. We were doing it with the Inter-American Development Bank. They were providing the funds, we were executing the work. We hired contractors, build these, and electric lines are nothing too fancy, right? Huge steel poles up in the air. You have these cross arms, they run the wires, and we ran for about 3-4 miles into the fields, and we picked up little stations to power the wells and stuff, right? When we were finished with that project, it had cost us about 20-something million US dollars, because we were doing a big area. It was a virgin area. We were doing it for the first time. I was the project engineer. So once we had commissioned, and it was startup and they turned on power and it was working, I thought my job was I went home to sleep, because it was really long for about almost 2 years. And every night, for that week after, they would call me and say, "Fitzroy, the line strip. And we are finding out what's going on." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Line strip. So we will have to come out in the night, get somebody to turn back on the power." And it was real trouble because the wells weren't producing and it became a big issue, right? So we started to walk the lines in the day. I would walk, we'd look for, the normal thing is when an electricity line trips or goes out of existence, you take a light and you flash the whole top. Sometimes you see TNT guys doing that. And you're looking to see if the wire bursts anywhere on the top, right? We did that repeatedly because that's what we are accustomed to. I'm talking about knowing your business. And then nothing happened for about a month, and this thing keep going on. After a while, people started to watch me cook here and say, "All the engineers know what they're doing. So all the building thing and it's not working," right? And then one day, a supervisor who I consider to be a really good guy, he walked along the line of the poles, and he saw some dead frogs on the ground. And he called me and he said, "Here, what I seen some frogs here." And I said, "Frogs?" He said, "Yeah, and they're looking scorched. So like they burn." So I went and I called a friend of mine who went to school with me at secondary school, and who was a marine biologist working for Trinidad at the time. He now works at BP, and he was in Russia for a number of years. And I said to him, "Tyrone, we're seeing some frogs at the tree. Could you come and check this at the pole?" And Tyrone came and he said to me, "These are frogs who are, because the poles were brightly painted in silver, and when the street lights hit them, they were reflective. Flies would gather at the top." Is that okay? Because the flies gather at the top, what would follow after the flies? The frogs. So the frogs would climb the pole, they would go to the top of the conductor, and they would stay there, and when they try to eat the flies and they get you, they will pile up there, and eventually they will earth off the conductor and cause it to trip, right? And when he told me that, I had a light bulb moment. I said, "Tyrone, you sure?" He said, "Yeah, man." I said, "So what to do?" He said, "Paint your poles black. Put some tar on them, make them dull, and try not to make them so luminous, and the flies won't be attracted and whatnot." But we did that, and we never had a trip again. And the senior manager at the company at the time, when we wrote him the report and said that it was frogs, he didn't believe me. He said, "Them fellas always have some story." But it started to happen in Moruga with T&Tech. And this story is from Tobago. And when T&Tech put it on the papers, I cut it out and I sent it up to him. And then they realized that we were serious, right? And I was happy that I could go to a subject matter expert in Tyrone who understood marine biology and who understood the behavior of amphibians and could help me in my sphere of activities. Is that all right? So I always like to put that as an example of where you have to know your business. Because if you don't understand the details, if you don't have, Mr. McKenna said that he thinks there is more to come. I believe I like to create a learning mentality. I love to learn. I have a curiosity mindset. I like to try to understand how things work. Because I feel the more I learn, the better I'm able to understand. Is that okay? So I like to say, if you spend plenty sheep time, then you'll be able to do with giant time. That's what David did. He spent plenty time when he was listening about sheep, and when the time come to deal with the giant, he was ready because he had put in the sheep time. Is that okay? All right, next one. When you know your organization, don't just know the hardware and the mechanics of your organization, but know the culture of your organization. Know how the people operate. Know what makes them tick, and know what is important to them. Know how people behave. Some people have a different kind of culture. There are some organizations I once, when Trinidad merged with Texaco, and we became part of the refinery in Point-A-Pierre, as we moved from Point Fortin to Point-A-Pierre, we would go to the main office, and we were accustomed as young engineers to when 4 o'clock and you had something to do, you kept working, because we weren't paid overtime, but it was just your responsibility. Everybody would stay in the office and you finish your job, and about 5, 6 o'clock you walk out. In Point-A-Pierre, because it was the Texaco scenario, when you're here, it was 4 o'clock. If you put your head out with the door, they lock you down, you know. It was like a stampede. Everybody moved. They would drop whatever they're doing and walk out, right? And when they saw the clash of the cultures, they said them point men and them like to work for free because they felt we were working out free. And it took a while to adjust to that. You have to know your culture, your organization. Know what makes people tick. Know what makes them do certain things. And it doesn't mean that you accept the culture, you know, but you have to know it before you try to change it. If you deem you need to change it. Sometimes you may not have to change it, you know, but you may just have to leverage it in a particular way. I have a lot of young people by me where we work who like to hike and who like to go into the forest on a weekend. That is a big thing for them. And they love to do community work. So part of our corporate social responsibility, we line up with them and we say to them, all these places that have floods in Toko and stuff, and in Sandy Grande, we give them money, and we tell them, you go and get this stuff, you go into those communities and help the people, and they love to do that. Because the culture of them is to get their recreation through hiking and trekking, but also to help people. Is that okay? And we have to leverage it to find an advantage for what we want to do. So you have to know your organization because Peter Drucker is right. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have the best strategy in the world. If you don't understand how the people work, they could destroy your company, yes? Let's keep going. I want to pick up a pace and finish off. If you're going to lead people, next slide. If you're going to lead people, next slide. If you're going to lead people, you need to understand that the world is changing and that people now are in a different phase. So the people who before we expected to work as industrial robots, come for 7, leave for 4. That is not happening anymore. Right? People are coming for different hours. Some people are coming because I have a lot of my employees who have young kids, because I have a lot of young people in my organization. And so when COVID hit us, and we switched to virtual, and we couldn't do that for everybody, right? Because you need operators to be physically on the plant, running the plant, and if you had a pump to change, you can't change that virtually, you have to do it in person. So the maintenance and the operations people stayed on the plant. But when I told the rest of the organization to go virtual, I remember one manager came to me and he said, when I gathered the troops every week and I would talk about how we are doing through this COVID period, and we'd have a virtual call ourselves. And I said, how are your team doing? And he said to me, well, I seem not to be able to track if they're really spending 8 hours on the virtual platform. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I check to see if they log on at 8 and if they come off at 4, but some of them logging on later and I'm not seeing them and I feel they're giving me a 6 for a 9. I say, mankind, who tell you to check that? I tell you to check that? He said, well, I feel I should check that. I said, I don't want to know about that. I no longer managing presence, I am managing results. Is that okay? And so we switched. It was a huge mindset. We switched to say, I don't want to, I care. I say, your people, your very people you bought, who you train under the bus, they send me emails 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning to get things approved. When I wake up, I see it. So clearly they're working sometime. And what I'm interested in is whether they deliver on the results. I'm not interested in their presence. Is that okay? So it's important to realize that the world has shifted. And as it shifts, if you're going to lead people, then empathetic leadership is becoming paramount. The days of the leader who don't care, oh, I am not talking thing I don't know. I was like that, you know. When men come by me to sad story, I say, boss, I don't want to know your life history. They finish, the people work outside. You understand? There was one guy, them pastors go, there was one guy who was an Adventist contractor on the plant. And we had a fire on the plant, and we had damaged some stuff. And for the restart, we had some carpentry work to get done. He was the woodwork man, and we had to fix some tables so the operators to put the computers on to see and stuff. And we had said that on this Friday, by the weekend, we'd start back up the plant. It takes about 2 or 3 days. And I went on the plant, and I asked them, where's the key back? And they say, well, the carpentry man. And I said, where's the probably carpentry man? He said, well, he finished. So I said, call him. So he came to me. And I said, young man, what's the story? And he said, well, I'm working on it, but I don't know, this evening I might have to leave early because I'm Adventist. I said, you're Adventist? I said, I don't want to know what religion you're in. When you're finishing with your job? And he watched me kind of cookie eye, and he said, well, I'll try to do it. I said, well, are you really okay about you and your Sabbath? No, boss man, get it done. So I left him, and I went back up the road. And next thing I see him come knocking. I was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He came in my door about 4. And he said, tell me you are Adventist too. He said, you're a real wicked man, boy. I said, yeah, but you lay down the name of the church if you give you a deadline and you don't want to do it and then want to claim you're Adventist now to not do it, right? I said, you have to give an extra effort if you're Adventist in the community, right? I don't work on Sabbath, but I work Saturday night. I work whole day Sunday if I need to. I work long hours on Monday without getting paid because you had to demonstrate your commitment to the organization, right? So we didn't beat him up. I really gave him an ease until he could come back this Sunday and finish it off. But I kind of wanted to send a message to him that don't send me that as an excuse, right? But the world has changed. The world has changed. And this focus on transaction and task, that has changed. And now the focus is heavy on relationship. Do you know your people? That's why the young ladies' icebreaker is so important. When you meet your people, there are people in my organization, I know their family situation. I have a mechanic, a technician, a mechanical technician, one of my best mechanical technicians. He's been with the company for 20 years. He's senior. He's the hard-working man. He could fix anything for us, right? But his wife has cancer, which I didn't even know until I met him in the car park and we had a long talk. And I've been getting reports that he's given trouble and that he seemed to be distant and that he has been talking people bad. And when I understood the extent of the cancer, I had to call his boss and say, you know that that man's wife has cancer? He said, I think he mentioned that. I said, you know the extent of that? And that she has to stop work and going through chemo and stuff? And I had to then mobilize the resources of the organization. We got EAP, we got other institutions to work with him to find people who can guide his wife through the process of chemo and recovery, etc. And also help him with his family situation and give him the time and the luxury to say, if this morning you don't come to work, handle your business and come after. Because I know that if I do that, he's likely to work better when he really can work. Is that okay? So the world is changing. The world is shifting to a space, next slide, where the expectation is that the leader's credibility is at stake. And if you still stand up there calling tasks, you finish, you're done, but people are hurting, people have dramas they're going through, they have uncertainty, then if you don't address those things, you lose your credibility. And people start to say, well, I wonder why I should follow you. Because you leading me down the wrong, you don't care about me. You ever hear that? That's the first thing they say, you don't care about me. You only care about the work here. So I like to let them know that you have to be able to do both. Now, this is not a cop-out, eh? Because I have other managers who like to come and give me a set of sad story and tell me this one, you know, he had this and he had that. I say, yeah, but where do you work? So at the end of the day, you have to set up a transaction where you start to get people to understand that if I help you on this side, then you have to help me on this side. And then you have to talk about sustainability. What is the long-term objective? Are you hoping that you will get output out of them today, or are you hoping you get output of them for the next 5 years? And if you're focused on stability and sustainability, we should be all right. Let's run through the others quickly, Dwight. Position yourself for success. Know what it looks like for your team. Let's keep going. Leaders who are preoccupied, leaders today, are not preoccupied with personal performance, but rather getting things done through others. When you become the leader, forget your performance. Stop telling people how good you are, because that is not important anymore. What is important is how good your team is. And if you can't show me how good your team is, I'm not interested in how good you are, because you are becoming expendable. I could get rid of you and still keep your team. Is that okay? And give them proper leadership. So as you move up the ladder to leadership, you said you wanted leadership, then be ready for what leadership brings. Because leadership brings a responsibility to say you must be able to perform. And you're performing not as an individual. I don't want a star performer. If I see a manager, he's always there early in the morning, late at night, and he doing all the work, and his people going home normal, and I feel something is wrong with him. Because he's clearly not getting his team involved, and he feels he has to do it all himself. Right, next slide. Yeah, well, this kind of says the same thing, so I'll run through these. I think we pick up most of that already, and the ones that are after too, we can go through those. Go through quickly, Dwight. Just different approaches to leadership. Sometimes you are strategist, sometimes you are change agent. Keep going. Sometimes you are a transactor, you're making transactions, you're building the company, you're an innovator. Don't assume that the same thing that worked last week should always work. If there are different ways of working, do it. Keep going. And you're a coach, you're a communicator. Communication is big, eh? I want to say that. Communication is big. You could be as bright as you are. If you can't communicate, you're a waste of time. And I have people who I know are really exemplary technical resources, or accounting resources, or finance resources, but they cannot explain to me or to the teams what is going wrong. And we have to work on strengthening them in that regard, right? Learn to be a communicator. I was really impressed this morning that everybody here who came up, including the ones who came up as leaders to say why they pick certain people, seem to be very good communicators. Develop that. Take part in debates. Take part in sessions where you're asked to preach. Start up in AY and do something. But learn to talk. Because if you cannot communicate your ideas, nobody knows what's in your head. Is that okay? And we need to hear you. Learn to write. Learn to spend time writing. Because you might meet a crazy boss like me who will not listen to lyrics, but I want to see it in writing. Because I feel if you could put it to me in a way where I could read in a quiet moment without hearing any emotion, and it makes sense to me, I could carry it forward. Because when I send it up to the shareholder to get it approved, they don't want to hear my lyrics, they want to see it on paper. And they have people in the back rooms who are analyzing this stuff. Learn to be a communicator. Let's talk self-leadership now. Closing. Some quick points. Drucker said, Peter Drucker, who is the father of modern management, Drucker said that you cannot manage others unless you manage yourself first. Right or not? I don't know that I can tell people, so I had a problem with that, because I know I came here on time this morning, but I have for years been a perennial latecomer. And some years, latecomer, yes. And some years ago, when I was HR manager, I would still come to work late. And one day my boss, Mark Loco, and the current NGC president, he was then the president of Yara, and he came to me and he says, Fitzroy, I'm looking for you on mornings and I can't find you. So I had a real creative exec assistant, right? Admin assistant. She used to open my door at 8 o'clock and shove some papers on the desk and leave a cup, like if it's coffee. And when he come, he thought I was at the plant checking something, and I would come back just so, right? This time I'm breaking the neck, 2 cocks and me coming up the road, right? Until one day his assistant called for me and she says, Fitzroy, Mark looking for you now, they're going to have a meeting. Where are you? Come up on the meeting and you're on the plant? I say, I out by cocks and me coming up. She said, you go fire you today, right? Because she thought I was late. I missed flights in the airport. I was going to Paris, France for a meeting with Yara's corporate leaders. And I got to the airport in Piaco. It was supposed to be 6 o'clock. I was traveling business class. I didn't think I had to do much. I had just one bag. We were going for a few days. So I kind of sauntered along the Sunday evening, and I got to the airport. And I got to the gate. The flight was supposed to leave 6:30 to head to London. And I got there about 6 o'clock. And when I got to the gate, I see them closing up the gate. I say, hey, what going on here, man? I had a flight. She said, you want to, what's your name? She said, I hear call the pilot. She said, look, he don't show up. The man we're looking for all the time. And I hear any pilot say, let him stay there. We ain't open no gate for him. And they leave me. When I called the travel agent who made the arrangements, he said, Fitzroy, you're supposed to get there 3 hours. This was early 2000. So she's supposed to get there 3 hours before international flight. How you know reach here? I said, well, it's just me alone. I really had a habit of reaching late for everything, right? So I had to come home, and I come home and I called the godly teacher. And I told her, I missed the flight. She said to go fly here today. You know? And I had to make arrangements and fly the next day. And I flew from New York, and I got to Paris. When I got to them, I was supposed to reach Monday. I got there the Tuesday. When I landed and I got to the hotel where the session was, it was 10 o'clock in the morning their time. They want a break. So I ran upstairs quickly, changed my clothes, put on my normal business wear, and I went downstairs and I sat down by my desk where my name tag is, but nobody apparently was there the whole morning. And I said, all right, they ain't gonna miss me. But then when everybody came in, I was the only black man in the room. And the head said, hey, Fitzroy, good to see you made it, man. How things? So I kind of learned, I had a habit of being late, you know, and yeah, I don't really think about it, it's crazy, yeah? So when I was HR manager, the boss came to me and he says, how could you punish people for punctuality if you yourself not punctual? And I kind of struggle with that a little bit. So when I went to this new job where I am the boss now, the assistant I have, she's old school, you know, she's come by me and tell me so and so late, and I say, yeah, let them handle the business. When they reach, they reach. I managing what they do. I don't care if they're here or not. And I can't believe that I had an approach, because in my heart of hearts, I'm not a timekeeping man, you know what I mean? Now I learned that sometimes you have to respect people's time and you have to be on time. You can't have people waiting. So I was here before 10 this morning, right? But I just didn't know that I'd always be late. So what Joka is saying is that if you have all of that was to say, if you're going to manage people, learn to manage yourself. Next slide, please. We close it off. This is an interesting stat that came from Harvard Business Review. In Harvard Business Review, they asked a number of global leaders, 195 of them, what is considered to be the most important trait for leaders. I know a lot of you thought I would come here today and talk about time management and talk about how to tell people to get fired and them kind of thing. But here what they said, they wanted people who have ethics and integrity. Ethics and integrity. And that is why I believe religious-based institutions like USC are in a really advantageous position to produce leaders for the industry. Because we value integrity more than we value competence. I want us to understand that. Some years ago, we would do psychometric assessment. You know that, right? Where you give people, we would take on engineering trainees out of the universities all over, not just UWI. And I was in charge of that. I was the mentor for the engineers. And we would get applicants. We had 6 positions. We would get 300-400 applicants. So to water it down, we would do a psychometric test. Because the psychometric test in those days was a big thing. It was the early 2000s, and we felt it would give you a sense of people's predisposition to engineering work, right? But we also included in the psychometric test a series of ethics questions. If you could steal something from the company and nobody would see you, would you do it? If you could go home early but still be paid for the full period, would you do it? Those are the kind of questions we led. And you'll be amazed how many people said yes to those things. So without fail, we threw them out. Because integrity and honesty wasn't there. Yeah, they're honest, but they're honest about their lack of integrity. You understand? They're being honest about their lack of integrity. So I am not waiting to try to correct that when they reach inside. I'm not their parents. I want them, yeah, tell me. I'm beating you up too much. Yes. And that's the risk I take. So I know that. I also not naive, right? So I also know that all the others who tell me no might come in and do exactly that, right? Because I have men who used to tell me as a young engineer, there was a manager I knew, when you go to his house, everything from the refinery in his backyard. And he used to tell me where the cow tied, they had a graze. Right? That was the standards they used. So I was saying to you that I understand that, But we had to find a demarker at that point in time. We stopped doing it, by the way. I don't think the industry does that anymore. But there's a huge expectation around integrity. People expect you to be honest. In all organizations I work in now, people sign conflict of interest declarations, they sign ethics forms, they sign things saying that they will declare if they have an interest, if something is going on, so that you make sure that you clarify all that is happening. You declare if you have a family working in a company who's doing business with you. Those are now normal practices within the workplace. So the workplace, because when Enron happened in the US many years ago, and shareholders lost their money, it became law to make companies honest, which is a strange thing. But it became law. All the IFRS standards around accounting and stuff is meant to make the organization honest. Let people see what exists and then make a decision. So my point is, and I hear you, brother, good argument, but I just tell you how it evolved, right? What is important now is that the industry expects people of integrity to work for them. And if you're in a place like USC which preaches integrity, great. Because some of the other institutions, while they give us competence, they don't give us integrity. And so we spend time having people going through videos and going through training sessions to let them know not to bribe the contractor. That when the contractor comes and he bids for a job, I have had contractors who come into my office and say, boss, that $1 million job we're bidding for you for, how much you expect it to come into at? I say, well, if I know what I expect it, I will not go out to you to ask that price. Because they expected that. There are people who have houses. In one company I worked, we had what we call the brown bag brigade, because we knew that they would receive these brown bags with money in it from contractors who were looking for money, right? And we eventually fired a few of them when we led some investigations into them. So it's important to realize that the world is pushing for integrity, and it's also pushing for people who could make their employees and those that they lead feel a sense of belonging. Feel that they are really doing. One of the videos I didn't get to show was the West Indies cricket team of yesteryear, not this one. Not Puran and them. The one with Holden and Richards and them. And if any time you get a chance, there's a movie called Fire in the Babylon. It's a powerful movie about West Indies cricket. As a Caribbean citizen, I suggest you watch that movie. Forget if you like cricket or not, just watch it. You understand. Hilary Beckles of the University of West Indies talks about the history of the societies in the Caribbean and how cricket was playing a part of that. And when you look at that, Vivian Richards, you know Vivian Richards has offered money, a blank check, a literal blank check, with just his name and he writing the amount to play cricket in South Africa during the apartheid regime when Nelson Mandela was in jail. And he refused. He refused. A black man from Antigua was barely making enough as a professional cricketer. It was like this time now. And he said no. And Nelson Mandela heard about it. And he remembered that West Indies cricket team when he became Prime Minister. So it's important to understand that you have to stand for integrity. And the industry expects you to stand for integrity. I will prefer to hire a less competent employee who I think has integrity than a real competent one who don't have integrity. Because I know that they will most likely undercut the organization. And what this survey is suggesting is that that is being valued in the industry today. Next slide, please. So there are some quick quotes, and I don't expect you to read one. I just want to read the one on my left. Yeah, the left. It says, rather, today's workforce is increasingly looking for meaning, human correctness, true happiness, and a desire to contribute positively to the world. So I spend a lot of time having town meetings with the employees of the company I work for, because I want them to understand the value of what we do to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. We make ammonia. Ammonia is one of the highest selling commodities in the world right now, so that when Stuart Young and Colin Member talks about the budget, you hear them talking about they have better prices at NGC and revenue because of commodities. I like to let my employees understand that when they keep the plant running, they're not just keeping it running because I want to get a reliability figure, they're contributing to the economy in Trinidad and Tobago. Is that all right? And that when they make ammonia, which goes to go fertilizer, about 70% of what we produce goes towards fertilizer, they're helping to feed the world. Because there's a lot of studies that show that arable land in the world is decreasing as the population increases. And therefore, the ability to grow food will not happen unless there is fertilizer in the world, right? So you have to sell that message. And then we have a very strong corporate social responsibility. We adopt some schools in Couva and in Orange Valley, just down the road from us, the same place where the fishermen died recently. We adopt those schools, we fix benches, we fix chairs, we go and do training with them, we provide stuff for them. So when we do employee satisfaction surveys, the employees rank the fact that we have a strong corporate social responsibility as one of the reasons they like to work for us. Why am I doing all of that? It's not because it is a nice thing to do to get ranks in the company, but it is to really help the employees feel centered, that they are working for a place they can feel proud about. All right? And so it's important to understand that that is the workplace today. Next slide, I will close it up. I don't want to give them plenty leeway, but I want to close up. So this one just re-emphasizes what I just said, right? That business ethics is the big thing now. People want people with integrity, people who could collaborate. If you can't work with people, then I don't know where you're going on working. So, you know, you say, well, I just like to work by myself. Well, if you're going to do that, go and find some job that is for you alone. But if you're going to work in the workplace, learn to work with people. Forget yourself a little bit and start to work with people. Develop empathy, right? Look, good team skills. Look to talk about innovation. Look about resilience. Resilience is a powerful word for me. I always like to say resilience is not the absence of drama, but the capacity to deal with it. Is that okay? Drama will come. Things will go wrong. Trouble will come in your life. Are you ready to deal with it? All right? Keep going. Next slide. From this book, The Corner Office, and Bryant also talking about leaders. He talks about 5 traits that I always like to leave with you as young leaders. You need to develop passionate curiosity. Always be willing to learn. You never stop learning. You stop learning when you die. Keep wanting to find out things, how they work. There are enough YouTube videos now that you can learn about anything. And there are also online portals that help you to teach you stuff, right? Learn. Learn to be confident. Don't second guess yourself to the point where you suffer the paralysis of analysis. You analyze so forth that you never go forward. And you're afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes will happen, so go forward. And learn to have the confidence to go forward, right? Learn to be able to work in teams. It comes back up again. Learn to see life simple. Some of us overcomplicate the life. And with a conspiracy theory in everything. And you tell you, well, we needed to work late. You say, you need me to work late, so he go look good. You go and tell the boss something, and he want me to make him look good and stuff. Forget all of that. Just do what you have to do. Is that all right? Learn to be simple, and then learn to be fearless. Have the courage to go forward. Closing. Last one, right. I feel you'll reach our destination is our journey. And therefore, you have to persevere. There are always things to learn. There are always things to find out. But don't give up. If you make a bad decision last week, don't beat up yourself to the point where you don't make another one next week. Make decisions. Make decisions. Get in the habit of making decisions. Persevere. And get to the point where we develop passionate leadership and become leaders who are able to go forward. So that's my spiel for today. If there are any questions, I don't know what I got, I'll take them. Yes, brother. Yes. A ring. Yes.
Is it that they are bypassing the manager to get to you? Isn't that bad?
No, they're not. So maybe I'll make that clear. But there are some things just on the delegation of authority in the company that I need to approve. So if they place a purchase order for something over, I think it's $10,000, it has to come to me to approve. So I would see those mails coming because it went through the other channels, the people before me, and the last person to approve is me. So when they get that notification that theirs are approved, they will normally send it to me. So I will normally see those things during the day. When I see during the night, it means that they are actually checking the system in the night, realizing it has been approved, but the next level of approval is mine. So I don't get too much bypass. I'll tell you some, just quickly. I'll tell you about bypassing. That is a trick in the organization, right? People like to, I have an open door policy. So I keep my door open and I sometimes go to the workplace I spend most of my day just talking to people, right? Rather than doing real stuff. And so people like to come into me and tell me about the boss, this or the boss that. I don't play that game. So if you're coming to complain about your boss, I will tell you, I am going to tell your boss what you have said and we'll try to solve it together. So they know that. When I hold town meetings, I tell them, if you come by me by talking to your boss, I am going to carry you back to your boss to figure it out. Make sure you go through your line. Now, it's not a problem to go through your line. You go to your line, your supervisor +1, and you didn't like the result, and you want to appeal to me, that's fine. And you can certainly tell your supervisors, I am going to the president for final decision. And they know I can talk to them, get an understanding, but I am not going to encourage undermining, because then my integrity is challenged. Is that okay? And I'll be careful about that, because I have an obligation to my team members, and I am mentoring them to be better. And if I'm undercutting them, then it don't make sense. So I don't encourage sending stuff to me alone. Now, that doesn't say we have a whistleblowing policy, which almost all organizations have now, which is part of this integrity push. So that if you feel that if you say something corrupt is going on in your department, and you don't want to say it because you feel to be victimized, you could go through the whistleblowing approach, which is anonymous, and it comes directly to me. And if my name is called in it, I have had a whistleblowing comment that says, Fitzroy know about it. But I don't see it. It goes straight to my chairmen and board members in the US. And when they meet with me, they say, Fitzroy, you have a complaint and your name get called. And so we will do an investigation. We do a proper detailed investigation to see if that is valid or not. If it is valid, we take action. If it's not valid, we dismiss it. So we allow for whistleblowing. But we don't encourage undermining. Yeah? Yes, sir.
All right, so one thing I wanted to say is that we should not, if someone has a passion for something, we should not shut them down.
Right.
Because look at all of these crime-ridden areas, like, for example, Laventille, Enterprise, and all of those different places, right? I bet if you go to those places and you were to do a survey, many of them have passion in so many different areas and aspects, like, for example, sports, trades, and all of these different things. Now, the thing about the work industry is that they'll focus more on qualifications rather than those who are actually passionate about the job. And many a times, even student workers as well who are looking for part-time jobs, they are often shut down or are turned away because they don't have the experience, they don't have the qualifications. Now, what I'm saying is that we should not just be looking for qualifications, but look at those who are actually willing to put in the work, who are actually willing to do what it takes to get to where they want to be. We should, as leaders, we should be looking out for our future. Our future starts with our generation coming up. So we must be the light for them to really motivate them and give them the opportunities needed to pursue whatever it is they want to pursue.
Fair enough. Fair comment. And you get no argument from me from that. I think we accept that. You have to appreciate, though, that in some areas, especially the energy industry is a high-risk activity. Right? You're talking high temperatures, pressures, people could
I'm just
die.
talking in general.
No, I'm just giving you an answer, right? So when you talk the energy industry, I'm saying that because I know it. For your whole insurance and your integrity, you have to make sure you have qualified people running your business. If the insurance company asks you, who is the man seen about this, and you can't show what he's qualified to do, then they are likely to put a mark against you and charge you more for insurance, because it means you're running a risky operation, you could kill people, right? So some institutions, if you're going on a plane, you don't expect the pilot to be a man who's willing, but you don't qualify, right? He has to be qualified. When the doctor ready to open you for surgery, a nurse, I like to always say that a nurse for 10 years does not a doctor make. Hold on. I'm saying here. So I'm just saying here that you have to see this thing from both sides. There is a value in pursuing qualifications, but I believe that companies have a corporate social responsibility to also show people what is possible and train them for it. So in our industry, we have in Point Lisas an apprenticeship program which we do with the National Training Agency, where people sign up for that, and they come into the company and they spend 2 years, we pay them a stipend, and they get exposure to welding, they get exposure to mechanical stuff, and when the 2 years is over, they will decide if they want to go and pursue certification or not, right? If they're really, really good and have a vacancy, yes, which is not always the case, but we take them. But the reality is that we allow for that kind of training. So there's a lot going on. That said, I am with you because I am clear, and you're tapping into a part of me that I don't always like to show, but from a social engineering point of view, I am not happy with the way we have disproportionately managed some of those communities. And I understand, coming from Point Fountain, the value of training that kept crime low because people were involved in meaningful endeavor. And I always believe that if you allowed for a John D, for instance, to be a little bit more, and you allowed for the MICs to function a bit better on the corridor, you had an opportunity to create a different pathway for some of these young people to allow them to be better than they are today, right? So there's a national problem, and we continue, again, because we are leaders in the industry, we continue to push the industry into that regard. And so we try to meet the young people in Couva, for instance, where our plant is situated, and we try to let them know what is possible. So that even if we can't hire you, you must know that there's an alternative reality you could face, and not just the reality of the gun and the gang. All right? So there's a responsibility for that, but that is part of the overall package going forward. So I try to get a balanced answer. I ain't trying to take a general comment and get specific. I just try to be balanced. Yes, sir.
So with your last slide point, you mentioned about not giving up and so forth.
Yes.
But is there a point where a leader must basically just throw in the hat and say enough, or they can't handle it anymore, or they need a break?
Yes. Yeah, well, you know, in the old days, we talked about work-life balance, right? Which is to suggest that if you're a leader in the industry, you need to have a balance. You need to work, and then you need to have playtime and that kind of thing. Today, there's still an issue, but there's also an issue of having meaningful work, where the work you do is not seen as a burden, but as something you enjoy doing, right? Now, that sounds a little bit naive and myopic, but it is reality, right? I tell people I enjoy my job. And I go to work not because I have to, because I want to, right? But that is not everybody's reality. And so sometimes you have to struggle through and kind of figure out where you are and then where you go. But that's skill. That's what it is. It's not precision. That skill to know when to walk away or to persevere is something that becomes learned over time. And you cannot learn when to keep going or when to stop. You know, I got to Petrotrin as the CEO, and we had a vision of saving the company, and then the government said they're going to shut it down. And I tried with them for a few months, and we realized that I want to make it work, and you want to shut it down. I walked away, right? And later on, they shut it down, right? Because that's what they were called. When I was hired, it wasn't to shut down, it was to make it work, right? So we were clearly two different paths, philosophically opposed to each other, and I walked away. We had to pick that. Some people would say, and I had a lot of friends when I walked away then, they say, well, you're a real quitter, you run away from the thing instead of fighting it through. When it mashed up after, they realized why I left, right? But it wasn't my view to go and tell them that. I just knew what decisions I had to make. So that is a little challenge you have to make, and it also becomes important in what Jim Collins called From Good to Great in his book, which is when to take people off the bus. Because you have to persevere people too, right? And a lot of times you may have people who give in trouble in your team, and your knee-jerk is to get rid of them. I don't like to do that. Your knee-jerk should be to persevere with them. But you will reach a point where you try everything in the book, and it ain't going nowhere, and you have to tell them, come off the bus. Right? But that shouldn't be your first reaction. It should take a little bit longer. Any other questions? Director, I didn't think we'd go this long, but I hope you all are okay. Yes? You have a question? Oh, okay. Good. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Student Life and Support Services Department, we would like to show Mr. Haywood our appreciation for such an informative session. So, Mr. Haywood and our Vice President of Student of ASB will present it to him. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this annual leadership seminar. Allow me to first say thanks to the Almighty God for making today's event a success. Thank you to our students, faculty, and staff for making such a special effort to be here. Special thanks to the Portraits of Excellence delegates and the ASB executive members. To the Corporate Communication Department, Ms. Lila Louie, Mr. Devon Ramlal, President Vianney Tony, Pastor Onisi Lafleur, Ms. Dinique Martin, Mr. Josh Powell, our Master of Ceremony, Mr. Hayden McKenna, our featured speaker, Mr. Fitzroy Haywood, we would like to say thank you. Some of the pointers we can take from his presentation was leadership is taught and can be learned. Leadership is situational. One size does not fit all. Learn to be a good communicator. Leadership is about being part of the team. Sink or float, you have to be part of the team. Two other important pointers are context drives behavior. You can achieve team success if you have great leadership. You succeed only when your team succeeds. It is important to stand for integrity. Let's all put our hands together once more for Mr. Haywood. We'll also like to say thank you to our technical and decorating and catering team and Mr. Lyndon Simmons, who will lead us in the school song after this vote of thanks. Once more, on behalf of the Student Life and Support Services Department, we express a heartfelt thank you for being here today. Thank you. At this time, I invite Mr. Simmons to do our school song, which will be followed by our closing prayer by our ASB President, Mr. Vianney Tony.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kindly stand. In the quest of knowledge and dignity, with our hearts aflame we have come, called to serve the church and society. We will join our hands as we foster friendship and unity. Our identity will maintain. God before us, our goals in focus. Great achievements we will attain. Beyond excellence to other light, in truth and loyalty, we'll do the right to always honor our alma mater, our beloved USC, our beloved USC. All right, so I gather that some of you all, maybe all of you all, need to learn the school song, all right? Good.
Let's pray. Let's have some reverence. Father, I want to thank you for bringing us here to this leadership seminar where we learned key steps or key guidelines on becoming or to be a great leader. I want to thank you for bringing each of one of us here safe, Mr. Haywood, and our student, faculty, and staff here safely as we venture out and as we partake in the meal Bless us and keep us in Jesus' name. Amen.